The stage lights were so bright they almost burned through her eyelids. Amelia Grant blinked twice, clutching the microphone stand like a lifeline. Her fingers trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it by adjusting the mic height for the third time. It wasn't the first time she had sung. She had sung in classrooms, in empty school auditoriums, and sometimes alone in her car when no one was watching. But this was the first time she was standing on the grand stage of Britain's Got Talent, and Simon Cowell himself was sitting in the front row, watching her with that trademark skeptical smirk. She was a high school English teacher, 34 years old, from a small town near Manchester. Her students often joked that she should be on TV because her voice was too good to be wasted on Shakespeare. But Amelia never believed that. Singing was her escape, not her career. Life had made her too cautious for dreams. Now, standing here in front of thousands, she could almost hear her heart thudding louder than the audience chatter. "Name, please," said Simon, his tone sharp, professional. Amelia. Amelia Grant. "And what do you do, Amelia?" asked Alicia Dixon, leaning forward with a kind smile. "I teach English literature at Crestwood High School," she said, forcing a small laugh. "But I've always loved music." Simon's eyebrows arched slightly. "A teacher." He paused. "And what are you going to sing for us tonight?" Amelia took a breath. Her voice came out softer than she intended. "I'll be singing Creep by Radiohead." A murmur rippled through the audience, half excitement, half curiosity. The song choice was bold, dark, emotional. Not the kind of cheerful pop number most contestants chose. Simon leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Interesting choice. You know, that song can go terribly wrong if you're not careful." "Yes," Amelia said quietly. "I know." There was something in her tone, not defiance, but quiet determination, that made Simon stop for a second. He nodded. "All right then, let's hear it." The music began. A haunting guitar riff filled the theater. Amelia closed her eyes. For a moment, the lights, the cameras, the judges, they all disappeared. She was back in her classroom, alone after school, strumming her old acoustic guitar while grading essays. Then she began to sing. Her voice was soft at first, fragile, like glass about to shatter. Musical notes. "When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye." Musical notes. The audience fell silent. Even Simon tilted his head slightly, studying her. Her voice carried pain, not rehearsed sadness, but something lived, something real. No one knew that her husband had left 2 years ago, that she'd spent nights trying to keep her son asleep while hiding her tears. No one knew how singing had been the only thing keeping her from breaking apart completely. As she moved through the verse, her confidence grew. Her hand steadied on the microphone. Musical notes. "You're just like an angel, your skin makes me cry." Musical notes. A few people in the crowd began nodding, already drawn in. By the time she reached the chorus, "I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo," her voice rose like thunder. The timid teacher was gone. Standing there now was a woman releasing years of silent pain. The judges exchanged glances. Amanda Holden's lips parted slightly, her eyes glassy. Simon frowned, not in annoyance, but in surprise. It wasn't perfect. It was raw, imperfectly human. But that's what made it real. Then, just as Amelia hit the final, "I don't belong here," Simon raised his hand. The audience gasped. He was stopping her. The music cut abruptly. Silence filled the auditorium. Amelia froze, panic flashing in her eyes. Had she ruined it? Did she sing too emotionally? Too differently? Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, his expression unreadable. "Amelia," he said slowly. "Stop for a second." Her heart sank. This was it. Her worst fear coming true. But then Simon spoke again. "Could you start that again?" he said. "From the beginning. Just the first verse. No backing track. Just you." A murmur of surprise swept through the audience. Even the sound technician hesitated before muting the track again. Amelia blinked. "Oh okay." She took a breath, stepped closer to the mic, and began again, a cappella. Musical notes. "When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye." Musical notes. The purity of her voice echoed through the hall like a haunting confession. Every word vibrated in the air, fragile and true. Simon didn't blink. By the time she finished the verse, there was a lump in every throat in the room. When she stopped singing, Simon didn't speak for several seconds. The audience waited, holding its breath. Then he said quietly, "That was beautiful." The hall erupted in applause. Amelia's hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. It was the moment that would change everything. The applause was thunderous, but Amelia didn't move. She stood frozen, staring at the judge's table as if she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Simon Cowell, the man known for his brutally honest critiques, had just asked her to start again, and then called her voice beautiful. It felt like a dream. When the audience finally settled down, Simon leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "All right, Amelia," he said, his tone softer now. "Let's do this properly. Take a breath, and give it everything you've got." She nodded, wiping away a tear with the back of her hand. The stage lights glowed a warm gold as the music began once more. The haunting melody of "Creep" filled the theater again, but this time, something had changed. This wasn't a nervous teacher singing to prove herself anymore. This was a woman reclaiming her soul. Musical notes, "When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye," musical notes. Her voice flowed effortlessly, tinged with quiet pain. Each note trembled with emotion but landed true, like a confession disguised as a melody. The camera zoomed in on her face. Her eyes glistened, not just from stage lights but from memories that played behind them. Flashback. 2 years earlier. It was raining that night. Amelia sat in her small kitchen, still wearing her work clothes, staring at the message glowing on her phone screen. Greater than, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Tom," her husband's final message. The words had shattered her like glass. For weeks, she had moved through her life like a ghost, teaching her students by day, crying quietly into her pillow at night. The only thing that kept her sane was singing. After school, when the halls were empty, she'd sit at the piano in the music room and sing until her voice cracked. Her students had heard her once, secretly recording a clip of her singing "Creep" and posting it online. Within a day, it had gone viral among local students, captioned, "Greater than, our teacher's voice deserves the world." It had embarrassed her at first, but later, it became a small light in her darkness. Back to the stage, Amelia's voice rose as the chorus hit. Musical notes, "I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo, what the hell am I doing here?" Musical notes. Every word struck deep. You could almost feel her pain, the kind of heartbreak only real life can teach. The camera cut to the judges. Amanda Holden blinked back tears. Alicia Dixon whispered, "She's incredible." David Walliams nodded slowly, mouthing, "Wow." Simon didn't move. His eyes were fixed on her, his usual mask of judgment replaced by quiet awe. For a man who had heard thousands of singers, this was rare. Something in Amelia's performance reached a part of him that was almost never touched, something human, fragile, and real. The second verse began, and her voice grew stronger, filled with both sorrow and defiance. Musical notes, "I want a perfect body, I want a perfect soul." Musical notes. A young girl in the audience clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "She sounds like she means every word." Because she did. Every lyric was a piece of her story, her insecurities, her loneliness, her feeling of never belonging. Her students, watching live from home, were texting each other frantically. "Greater than, that's Miss Grant. She's killing it. Simon's not even blinking. This is crazy." Then came the bridge, that one haunting line that always broke her heart. Musical notes, "She's running out the door." Musical notes. Her voice cracked, not because she lost control, but because the emotion was too heavy to carry cleanly. The audience felt it too. By now, even Simon's jaw had softened. His fingers tapped the table unconsciously to the rhythm, not as a critic, but as someone genuinely moved. When she reached the final chorus, she didn't just sing, she poured her soul into the mic. Musical notes, "I don't belong here." Musical notes. Her voice echoed into silence. And then, nothing. For several long seconds, the theater was completely still. No sound, no whisper, just the echo of what she had left behind in the air. Then, all at once, the audience erupted, a standing ovation that shook the room. People whistled, cheered, clapped until their palms burned. Some were crying. Amelia pressed a hand to her heart, trembling, her chest rising and falling as if she'd just run a marathon. Simon still hadn't moved. Then slowly, deliberately, he stood. It was rare, almost unheard of, for Simon Cowell to give a standing ovation. The audience went wild again as he looked at Amelia with something that looked suspiciously like admiration. Simon's words. When the noise finally faded, Simon leaned toward the microphone. "Amelia," he said, Pausing. I'm going to be honest. When you walked on that stage, I wasn't expecting that. She smiled nervously, still clutching the mic. You said you were a teacher, and I thought, all right, this will be sweet, maybe something small and pretty. But what you just did. He shook his head. That was one of the most emotional performances I've heard in years. The audience gasped and applauded again. Amanda nodded in agreement. You took a song everyone knows, and somehow made it your own story. That's rare, Amelia. Alicia leaned forward, smiling warmly. I felt every word. You made me cry. David grinned. You have a gift. Not just a voice, but honesty. You can't fake that. Amelia's eyes filled again, her voice trembling. Thank you. I never thought. Simon interrupted gently. You just reminded every person in this room why music matters. Dash dash dash. As the golden lights glowed brighter, the screen behind her flashed the words. Sparkles. 4 yeses. Sparkles. The crowd exploded again. Amelia gasped, covering her mouth. The confetti cannons fired, showering the stage with gold and silver flakes. She laughed and cried at the same time, completely overwhelmed. Simon smiled, a small, rare, genuine smile, and said quietly into his mic, You belong here, Amelia. The camera zoomed in on her tear-streaked face as she whispered,